Hey YouTube, it is me, Kelly here, and welcome to my channel. I am so glad that you are here. Alright, so today I want to talk to you guys about how I almost did not make it into nursing school. Actually, how I almost didn't even pursue nursing and doubted myself and my abilities to get into the nursing program. So let's jump right in. Alright, so I wrote out a few notes on my iPad just to help me to keep track and try to remember the things that I want to mention in this video. So I'm not sure if you guys have heard of a thing called like the gifted child or the gifted child syndrome, but this kind of evolves around just being a kid that is recognized and acknowledged for their uh, academic qualities and gifts and abilities to the extent that they start to internalize that acknowledgement and associate it with their sense of self-worth and sense of self in general. So this can be a good thing. It's good for parents and teachers and people in a child's life to acknowledge their abilities, but also acknowledge other qualities so that they're not prone to associate their sense of self-worth with what they are able to and not able to accomplish. The issue with this is that when kids associate themselves with what they are able to accomplish, if they face a challenge or what they consider to be a failure or an inability to accomplish something, this can really be detrimental to them, and they may overreact to this sort of situation compared to someone who is not prone to do this. This can lead kids to feel as though they are imposters, and this can really trickle into their adult life and their desire to pursue certain things. I know for me, growing up, I was always acknowledged for my academic pursuits. I was always reading ahead of my grade level. I was the model child, poster child for being a nerdy, homework focused, study focused kid. My parents never had to force me to do my homework. I was literally the kid, even into high school, sitting in the lunchroom reading alone. And not that I didn't have friends, but I was just so engulfed in my desire to learn, which was a good thing. It's definitely something I've always been passionate about. But I started to really associate my ability to accomplish things with my sense of self-worth. Um, I was a very insecure kid, honestly, and I never really considered myself to be super pretty. I struggled with weight here and there. So, one thing that I was good at and one thing that I was acknowledged for throughout my life was my ability to accomplish things academically. You could say I was a straight A student or whatever. So I really clung to that because honestly, it felt good to be acknowledged in some way. So this was all fine and dandy until I got into adulthood, and I started college a little bit after I turned 18. I didn't go the traditional route. I became a young mom, and so I ended up starting at community college. Initially, I had wanted to go to a different state and do my undergrad there and pursue becoming a doctor. That was my initial goal, but I was also worried about leaving the state and what I do for childcare, et cetera, et cetera. And then I met my ex-husband, and that's just an entirely different story. But I ended up going to community college because I had gotten pregnant with my second child at the time. And so it wasn't the traditional route. And as I found myself deciding to become a nurse and pursue that career path, I was filled with self-doubt. So if you guys are not familiar with what the imposter syndrome is, I will let you know. So imposter syndrome involves feelings of inadequacy, even in the face of information that proves that to be untrue. So you don't feel competent, you don't have self-confidence, you're not secure in your abilities and what you believe you can accomplish. And so that really starts to build self-doubt, and feelings of failure that can lead to perfectionism, and you're overly self-critical, and you doubt yourself, you know. And so that is what I started to experience when I decided that I wanted to pursue nursing as my career. I started at community college, as mentioned, and I was beating around the bush. Like, I was taking all these prerequisites, math and all these other things, English, social studies, and doing well. But I was really reluctant to get into those core classes, such as biology and anatomy and physiology and things like that, because I didn't believe that I could do it. I know, as I've studied about the gifted child syndrome and imposter syndrome, they talk about how, kids come to this conclusion where they feel like they're just not smart anymore. And I've had that happen to me so many times throughout my academic career. So I was just so reluctant to get to these classes. I literally took every single prereq that I could, even the extra classes that I really didn't need to take, but I was just so afraid. I did not have the confidence to get into these classes. Some of this stemmed from the fact that I was a young mom, and so I didn't have a traditional high school experience, and I didn't feel like I had enough exposure, even though I've always done well and, passed so many classes with flying colors. I just thought that it was just luck, or, I don't know. I just had no sense of self confidence. So when I finally got into those classes, I literally crushed them. I crushed them. And this is not me being self indulgent, but I am extremely proud because I was so afraid of failure that I almost kept myself from pursuing something that I desired so deeply. And being able to accomplish what I was so afraid of built my self confidence. And that is something that I encourage people to do. If you're struggling with imposter syndrome and self doubt, say yes. Start saying yes, even when you're afraid, even when you think you're going to fail, because you just might surprise yourself. Another thing that I would encourage is to let go of negative thinking. We all have negative thoughts about ourselves, unfortunately, and it can be a constant thing. But it's so important to just get a hold of those thoughts and brush them off. Acknowledge what you're feeling, but then let it go. And so when I listen to a lot of like self help books and different podcasts, they just talk about the fact that we really have control over our thoughts and emotions and feelings more than we realize. So when we start to get those negative thoughts, it's so important to let them go and counter them with good thoughts, or remind yourself of all the things that you were able to accomplish even when you thought that you couldn't. And that brings me into my next tip. Keep track of your success, keep track of your progress. So when you are caught in a moment of self doubt, you can remind yourself of how far you've come. Another thing that I've had to learn with battling my imposter syndrome and sense of self doubt is to let go of perfectionism. So, as I grew and associated my self worth with like having these huge accomplishments, I became a perfectionist, and I became very critical, not just of myself, but of those around me. Like, I held myself and those around me to such a high standard that it was almost impossible to even reach at some points. And then I would get so critical and upset with myself, and that would lead to very detrimental habits. And right now, I'm actually listening to a book. It's called Fuck Your Brain. I'm sure you guys are familiar with this book, but I highly recommend it. And it just really talks about how we process things and coping mechanisms that we develop based on experiences and traumas that we've had. Um, and so I literally lost my train of thought, guys, but bear with me. So yeah, so I would be very critical of myself and hold myself to these high standards as well as the people around me and beat myself up when I couldn't meet those standards. But perfectionism is really a maladaptive coping skill that is helpful to no one, honestly, because you get into the cycle of having these high standards that are unrealistic and you're literally setting yourself up for failure. And I just had to realize that my desire for perfection was unrealistic, and it's something that I still have to work through today. I still feel failure. Um, and when you have that fear of failure and you desire perfectionism, it can also lead to other bad habits such as procrastination. And anyone who's ever been a student, I'm sure, is familiar with being a procrastinator, and it's not a healthy coping mechanism. But when you start to hold yourself to such high standards and you expect perfection out of yourself when you are facing a challenge that you're not so sure about your ability to accomplish it, you start to have self-doubt, and that leads to procrastination. And this was not a huge thing for me in my undergrad, but I'm noticing it more and more as I'm in grad school pursuing a doctorate degree. First of all, I'm like, how the hell did I get here? Because we fall into the loop of comparison and we hear other classmates and see what they're doing, or people that have gone before us and our instructors, and we're like, I'm not qualified to be here. Like, they're just letting anybody into doctorate programs these days. Like, sometimes I've had those feelings. And so I've definitely had to counteract those thoughts. And the last few semesters that I've had in grad school, I've really realized the extent of how this whole gifted child imposter syndrome situation has trickled into my adult life. And it's led to more and more procrastination, honestly, which has been horrid, 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 horrid. And it's like I can tell in my mind when I'm procrastinating, but I continue to do it anyways. And that is the issue with breaking the cycle of perfectionism. So we may never be perfect, obviously. We may still hold ourselves to high standards at some point in time, and it is good to have standards, obviously, and want to accomplish great things and knowing your potential, but it can be detrimental if we are not kind to ourselves. And that's another tip to help with imposter syndrome. We have to recognize that we are human and be kind to ourselves, and recognize that a moment of failure is not a defining moment. So if there's anything that you take away from this video out of all of my rambling, I want you to take this away, that a moment of failure is not a defining moment at all. Period, queen. Like, it's not. You will persevere, and you need to get out of your own way. So, yes, I'm sure you guys are wondering, I did make it through nursing school, and I made it through nursing school with a 4.0 for my first degree in nursing. And I became a registered nurse, and I'm so grateful to have accomplished that. But also, having those accomplishments have also contributed to my imposter syndrome and fear of failure, because it's like, okay, I've set this bar so high already, and now what do I do? And when I went on to complete my bachelor's degree, I got like 2 B's during the course of that. I think I got like a B and A minus. Honestly, I don't even remember, but they weren't straight A's. I did not graduate with my bachelor's degree with straight A's. And I was like, ooh, like, I didn't meet that mark. But you know what? When you're on the floor in the hospital saving lives, no one is going to ask you if you got straight A's when you became a registered nurse, okay? And it's not just a grade. We are so much more than that. And I have to remind myself of that all the time. And that's why I have this. You are more than your GPA, because that is literally the truth. We are not defined by what our grades are, or what our status is, or any of these outside factors. Like, we are who we are, and that's enough. And so, however you show up, as long as you're showing up, that is all that matters, because showing up is literally most of the work. So I hope that you found something that I've shared in this video helpful, and I look forward to sharing more videos with you guys. If you like this video, please like and subscribe to my channel. Follow me on Instagram, follow me on TikTok. You can learn more about my recent open heart surgery, some information about my journey as a nurse and in grad school. We've got a podcast brewing, so stay tuned for that. And yeah, love you guys. Bye.